All right, let's get this show on the road, shall we? Welcome on in, everybody. Come on in. Sit back, relax, and tune in to the Astro weather for the week. I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell, Blind Stallion Space Wizard, here to bring you the Astro weather of the week as it unfolds. Before we jump into the astrology, I don't know, as y'all are sauntering in, just want to give folks a heads up. I do a astrology themed radio show called the Melee Report. The new episode just dropped. I will make that available to the listening public as soon as I'm done with this. And this past show was completing a trilogy of radio shows going out to the descent of Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth, which is sort of related to the Venus retrograde cycle. So we completed that trilogy with yesterday's Melee Report, which I'll be releasing right after this to the general public. Good morning, y'all. Welcome on in. How's everybody doing today? I also want to let folks know that I am giving a talk at LA Astrofest. That's running from April 25th through April 27th. I'll be speaking on Saturday at noon Pacific time, talking about astrology and parts work and ways of utilizing astrology within a parts work or IFS model, which I'm super excited about. I'm a little tired today because I was cramming on my presentation yesterday. But anyway, if y'all happen to be in LA or on the West Coast or are just interested in seeing me talk or checking out a great astrological conference, come check out LA Astrofest. That'll be happening this coming weekend in LA, and I'm super excited for it, and I hope to see some of y'all there. Good morning, y'all. Good morning, Harmony. Nice to see you, my friend. Good morning, Gina Maria. All right, I think that is all the announcements that I have for right now, but never you fear, I will re-announce them at the end of this exciting Astro weather report. And right now, let's jump into the astrology of the week. We are looking at this week in space for April 21st. That's today through April the 27th. And whew, this is kind of a big one. There's a lot going on, a lot of tension in space. The kind of big energy of the week is we have the Mars Pluto opposition, which is perfecting later in the week. We have a T square with that Mars Pluto opposition with the Sun and Taurus coming in to just add a little bit more tension if the tension wasn't enough. I don't know if y'all are feeling it. Like it is palpable. Feel like you could cut it with a knife. And I don't know, it's intense out there. Um, so yeah, just be good to your nervous systems. Try and like take it easy, take deep breaths. Um, this all kind of culminates at the end of the week with a new moon in Taurus, where the moon will be separating, or the sun and the moon will be separating from this T square, which may prove a little relief, but I don't know. We're in for a doozy, my friends, but never you fear because your space wizard is here to help you navigate whatever be coming at you so you can be dodging them like Neo in the Matrix. You know what I'm saying? Just dodging those planetary energies like Neo be dodging bullets. So anyway, let's jump into the astrology. Enough out of me. Let's talk astrology. So today, Monday, April the 21st, we have Saturn, the planet of limitation and constriction, also the reality principle, conjunct the North Node in Pisces at 26 degrees and 50 arc minutes of that mutable water sign. And so something to think about. And, I because there's enough space weather going on, I don't really bring in the nodes very much, but they are important points, especially when we get kind of big transits to them, big conjunctions to them. And the nodes are the places where eclipses occur, right? So there are these sort of faded points in the North Node, Rahu. sort of envisioned as the dragon's head, who is consuming and consuming and kind of pulling us deeper into reality. This is also a point of increase, as well as in the evolutionary astrology model, it's thought to be sort of the remediation for the south node, right? It is what we're being called to enter into in this life, a place that we get to develop new behavioral and emotional patterns. Which is great, sounds great, but it takes some work. Now we have Saturn conjunct this point, right? This point of increase. Saturn is limitation. So this might feel like the things that we've been working towards are being stunted, or Saturn also deals with responsibility. So we may be called into more responsibility, right? Increased responsibility in order to create the things that we are trying to, I don't want to use the word manifest, but the things that we are trying to make real in this life. And so, a question to ask ourselves today and throughout this week is, what do we want to make real? What do we feel called to make real? Also, if we're talking about the North Node as the development of new kind of emotional or behavioral patterns, right? These things take work, right? It takes consistent work, it takes dedication to start a new neural pathway. Right. And this is why, recovering from addiction or changing our behaviors or, things like that are challenging, right? Because we have these sort of well-worn pathways in our brains that are easy to fall back into when we experience stress, when we're lonely, when we're tired, right? When we're not feeling at our best. It's really easy to go back to what we've always done. And like they say, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten, right? And so Saturn sort of conjunct this North Node, right? This place where we get to are called to make a new pattern, to forge a new road. Saturn is like, cool. What are you going to do about that, right? How are we going to be dedicated to this process and show up every day to be making this change, to be developing new behavioral patterns, to be working, creating new structures to sort of create the changes that we envision, right? Or that the North Node is asking for us, right? Um, Saturn is also consequences, right? So this is a place of dealing with the consequences of our actions, both collectively and individually. Saturn as the Lord of Karma, right? And karma says that every action has a result. It has a consequence, right? And karma is just the consequences of our actions, right? It's not like, oh, I do something good, so something good happens to me, right? It is not like that. It's everything that we do creates a ripple, right? And those ripples ripple out and they impact and affect other things, right? And this is what karma is. There, that each action has an effect in the world, right? On a spiritual, mental, physical, emotional level, right? And so, things that were planted will grow and blossom and fruit, right? The actions that we have taken set events into motion, right? So Saturn conjunct the North Node is a place of, where we are experiencing the consequences of the actions, right? The things that we have done in the past. And the North Node is a place of increase as well as this point of hunger that pulls us into the world, right? This is a moment where the chickens come home to roost, if you will, right? Where we experience the consequences of our past actions, right? And, being like, your actions will have consequences, right? Makes us all like feel like this. There are consequences to these actions, but we don't really think about good consequences, which our actions have as well, right? When we do good things, there are good consequences. And it doesn't mean that like, oh, I gave somebody $2, so somebody's going to give me $2 back, right? That's not really how it works, right? We give somebody $2 and we're like, oh, I feel good about myself. That is the consequence of that action, right? So this is a time where we get to see kind of these things ripen, the consequences ripen, right? And to just think about, the actions that we take in this world is like throwing a stone into a pond. It creates a ripple that extends outward. Saturn conjunct the North Node, right, is the place where the ripples sort of hit the shore and the things that were set in motion become real. And so, again, thinking about what we want to make real, what we have been making real, what we are kind of reaping and harvesting at this point, as well as thinking about what we are kind of putting our energy towards, what new patterns or new structures do we want to create, and what's the work that is required to make that happen. So, Wednesday, April the 23rd, we have the Sun in Taurus squaring Pluto in Aquarius. So tension kind of ramping up already kind of midweek. And this is occurring at 3 degrees and 47 minutes of the fixed signs of Taurus and Aquarius. Right, so this transit is sort of building up towards the Mars Pluto opposition, which is occurring on the 26th. Sort of like increased pressure that is mounting, right? A square is a hard aspect where there is tension, right? These planets are at cross purposes. Pluto is this evolutionary force that pushes us towards transformation, is the power of death and decay that precedes the rebirth. Right? The sun is the kind of shining force of consciousness. It is our identity and our ability to express and shine our light into the world. Right? And so, in this hard aspect, we were being asked to let go or surrender parts of our ego identity so that something new can emerge. This is an opportunity to let go of some maybe like false identity that may have been formed as a survival mechanism, either to fit in or receive praise or receive love or to feel connected or to stay safe, right? There are all these reasons ways that our kind of identity develops. Some of it is receiving good feedback, some of it is receiving praise, some of it is to fit in, right? We're altering our behavior, some of it is a response to trauma, right? And all these things kind of like come together and coalesce to form our ego identity, our sense of self, and how we show up in the world, right? And these things are not often conscious, right? We kind of just do what we can with what we got and hope it works out, right? And then somebody's like, "Oh, I like that," and we're like, "Cool, I'll do more," right? Or that was bad, and we're like, "Whatever, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. You can't tell me what to do," right? And so, this sort of ego identity that is formed through all these experiences and feedback sort of becomes who we believe ourselves to be. And in this square with Pluto, these sort of unconscious forces of death and rebirth, we're maybe asked to sort of look at that, right? And Pluto is maybe asking us to discard or compost some of these outdated ego structures, the mechanisms that we created to survive, which are maybe not in line with who we truly are. Right. And as we release or surrender some of these outdated ideas of who we should be or who we could be, right, something more authentic or more appropriate for this moment can emerge. Right. This might sound great. Right? Everyone's like, yeah, sign me up. I want to be my most authentic self. Right. But it's not easy. Right. Anytime we're dealing with Pluto, it ain't easy. Right. And the sun in the fixed sign of Taurus is not really into change. Right. Taurus wants to keep things the same and wants to keep things safe. It's like, nah, I want things to be nice and good and chill. Like, I'm good with that. I'm good with that transformation stuff. Maybe later. Right now, I just want to eat a sandwich and watch Gilmore Girls, right? And so, Taurus just wants to hold on to what's working and what feels good, right? And sometimes what feels like working isn't really working, right? The kind of behaviors that we have developed to self-soothe or to navigate are not really supporting us, right? Or maybe they are keeping us small or keeping us locked into this old ego identity. And so, one of the things that I was thinking about as I was putting this together is kind of the archetype of Taurus, which is connected with the myth of the Minotaur, who is born from the greed of King Minos, who defied Poseidon. Minos was like, "Yo, Poseidon, I want to be king. Will you send me this enchanted white bull so that everybody will appreciate my power?" And Poseidon was like, "Yeah, no problem. No problem, bro. Just sacrifice it to me when you're done, and we're all good." And Minos was like, "Yeah, definitely got this." And receives the bull, becomes king, is like, "This is great, but you know what? I really like that bull. So I'm gonna sacrifice this other bull instead, and I don't think Poseidon will ever notice." Right? What do you think happened? Poseidon noticed, and dude was pissed. So he enlists Aphrodite to enchant Minos's wife to fall in love with the bull. And she eventually sleeps with it with a little help from her friend Daedalus and becomes pregnant with the Minotaur. Right. And so this first part of the story is asking for a sacrifice, which is on brand with Pluto's energy, right? Pluto is looking for sacrifice, surrender, right? Composting, release, death, right? We must give something up in order to grow, right? In order for something new to emerge. But when our ego becomes too powerful, the balance is thrown off, right? When that ego identity is like, nah, I'm gonna keep this bull. I'm good, right? I don't need to sacrifice anything, or I'll sacrifice this thing that doesn't really matter to me. That's not really a sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? Like a sacrifice is to make something sacred. And so we're making sacred the energy that is bound up in a thing, right? So that something new can emerge. Right. And when we don't do that, when we are holding on to what we think it should be or how we want it to be, right? When we're not really giving something up out of fear or, I don't know, out of like safety or just out of hubris, right? Something monstrous ends up emerging. So Minos throws the Minotaur, his son, right, into the labyrinth. And by the way, the Minotaur has the head of a bull and the body of a human, which is the Greeks have a lot of like chimeras, right? Half human, half animal things. However, when something has the head of an animal and a body of a human, the Greeks are like, oh, that's all bad. That's all bad, right? Because we sort of have the animal instinctual mind, the animal drives that are running the show instead of the human drives, right? So the kind of animal instinctual like lusts or passions, the unmediated kind of animal brain running the human body can be really dangerous, right? It can be dangerous to culture, can be dangerous to the individual, right? And so we have this kind of monstrosity that Minos throws into a labyrinth, right? This intricate maze. And he feeds him Athenian youths once a year, right? And the people of Crete can kind of hear the screams of the Athenian kids dying, but they just go about their business, believing that it's probably for the best and at least it's not my kids, right? And I think this is maybe like one of the shadow sides of Taurus being like, oh, it's all bad, but like, you know what? I'm good. I got my sandwich, I got my Netflix, like I'm chill. Like, it's not at my door yet. Right. And so something to think about with that like fixed energy of Taurus that just wants to hold on to what's good. Meanwhile, like everything's burning down around it. Like that dog in the meme with the coffee. Oh, it's all good. Right. And so finally, this Athenian hero Theseus comes, and he signs up to get fed to the Minotaur. And the King Minos's daughter Ariadne takes a liking to him and helps him out. Right, so the Minotaur lives at the center of this labyrinth, and Ariadne gives Theseus a ball of string to unspool behind him as he enters into the labyrinth, so he can find his way out. Right. And so there is this need to enter into the depths of our psyches to meet the shadow that lives there. Right? The Minotaur is the shadow of greed, of shame, of feeling not enough, of lust, of desire, all of these sort of uncomfortable feelings that have been locked up at the dark center of the psyche, of this psychological maze. Right. And so Theseus represents the courage to enter into this inner labyrinth and to face these challenging feelings, right? But we are aided by Ariadne's string, right? This yarn or continuous thread provides continuity, helps us to find our way in the dark. It is not a weapon or bronze or of bronze or hardened steel, but this hand spun linen, right? That we touch and hold that helps us on our journey, right? It's an actual physical, like I'm here right now. Right? And I think about threads or yarns as stories, right? The story of our life, the story of who we want to be. It's the story of our past, right? Not just individually, but collectively. Is this myth, right? The one that I'm telling right now, which is one of the threads that can help us grope our way in the dark. It is all the myths that come to us through the collective unconscious, right? And so the sun provides a sense of coherence, coming back to the astrology. It's the thing that the other planets orbit around, right? And the sun in our psyche is that cohering center. And as we enter into the labyrinth, right, part of that solar coherence needs to undergo a transformation so that this authentic part of the self can shine more brightly, right? This is an invitation and an initiation, right? And at the end of it, Theseus emerges as a hero, right? And the sun is a heroic archetype. And the thing that makes this possible is being able to follow that thread, right? The story that is being spun by that authentic self, right? Which allows us to step into who we can be instead of being limited by who we think we are, right? And this requires great courage. The courage to enter the labyrinth, to face the Minotaur, to face all of this shadow material, all of this shame that lives at the center that we don't want to open to, right? This is also the courage to step into the role of the hero in our personal myth, right? And we can follow the thread that we are spinning that has maybe been spun for us throughout our life, right? And also, it's an opportunity to recognize, okay, what is the story I'm living, right? What is the thread that I'm following? Is this authentic to me or does this feel right to me? And how do I, if it doesn't, how do I grab onto a different thread? How do I tell a new story? Right. So just something to think about with the Sun square Pluto happening on Wednesday. All right. How's everybody doing? Yeah, and uh, um, Gina Maria said, feels like what's happening in our country. Yeah, I see that, and I think that is appropriate, right? And we are collectively maybe needing to follow a thread, right, that helps us to show up as our best self instead of surrender our power or hide away or not respond to the call. So also on Wednesday, April the 23rd, we have Venus in Pisces conjunct the North Node at 26 degrees and 54 arc minutes of Pisces. So yeah, we had Saturn conjunct the North Node, then we have Venus conjunct the North Node, and then Venus will conjunct Saturn. So a lot of action happening with those planets and the North Node. So February 1st was the first conjunction, which is at 28 degrees of Pisces. April 1st was the second conjunction of Venus in the North Node at 27 degrees of Pisces. And that's when Venus was retrograde, right after Venus made their heliacal rise, which is when they first appear on the eastern horizon. Right, so this is the third and final conjunction, which is occurring at 26 degrees of Pisces, and now Venus is direct. Right? Um, and yeah, this conjunction includes Saturn, who is currently at 27 degrees of Pisces, and Venus will come in to conjunct them in a day or so. And so this might be kind of a reality check for Venus, who is coming off of, conjunctions with, the first conjunction with the North Node was also a conjunction with Neptune. So there may have been a seed planted, a very Neptunian seed planted around dreams and fantasies and daydreams and desires and what it could be. And the North Node is this point that is hungering for things. So what the North Node might have been hungering for is a fantasy that is created by Neptune, right? So yeah, the initial conjunction on February 1st may have had us thinking about romantic ideals, having a vision or a dream of things, how we would like things to be or what we desire, right? With the second conjunction, Neptune is moved into Aries, right, away from the North Node, and so it has a different flavor, right? And so now we have Saturn kind of taking the place of Neptune. So we might be getting more down to earth, right? A more like practical sense of what we desire, right? So Venus and the North Node are still in Pisces, where Venus is exalted. So it's not necessarily like totally practical, right? But Venus is direct now and has gone through all this rethinking and reimagining, right? Um, And the Venus Saturn conjunction will perfect about 7.5 years later, early Thursday morning, right? So Saturn might bring a more pragmatic or realistic approach to what Venus is hungering for. Again, the North Node is sort of like consuming and hungering and kind of craving. It also is talking about like developing new patterns, right? So we may be looking at new relational patterns, right? Or new things that we desire, or new ways that we want to experience pleasure, right? And so, as Saturn is like all up in the mix, we also might be dealing with the limitations of our desires, right? Saturn might shut down some of the dreams which were initiated during the Venus conjunction with Neptune back on February the 1st. And due to Saturn's limiting and constricting nature, Venus might come to realize that although are looking or even longing for something, it might not be really feasible, right? And so Saturn kind of providing a reality check while the North Node is sort of like hungering for something, right? So the North Node is this point of increase. And it's associated with Rahu, the head of the dragon, right? Who consumes and consumes and is never full, right? Because it doesn't have a belly, so it doesn't know if it's full, right? In evolutionary astrology, the North Node is seen as a remedy to the issues of the South Node. It's a place of creating new pathways and new responses and shifting old karmic patterns. Right. So again, Venus was conjunct the North Node on February 1st at 28 degrees of Pisces. So we can think back to that time at the beginning of February and see what was going on or coming up. Right. Um, and let's see here. Right as Venus comes into conjunction with Rahu, this head of the dragon, right? It may create like a hunger or a thirst in Venus that wants fulfillment, right? It also might cause us to make new choices or to shift old patterns, right? So Venus is exalted in Pisces, and they're receiving a lot of support here. If we think about this North Node as a point of increase, we can think about the Venusian qualities and strengths being amplified. Right. In Pisces, this can look like creativity and imagination. This can also be an amplification of our romantic longings, right? Um, and this is a good time for doing dream work and also engaging in creative practices. A story that I think about with Rahu, right, this sort of consuming dragon force coming into relationship with Venus is this fairy tale of the Lindworm, right? And so a prince is born who is a worm. He is a twin. He is the firstborn, and then shortly after, his like very handsome princely brother is born. And the Lindworm kind of goes out into the woods and does his dragon worm thing, right? And leaves the family behind. And one day he decides that he wants to marry. So he comes back to the castle because he hears that his brother is getting married. And he's like, oh, hell no. Older brothers marry first, right? And so he like destroys the wedding, right? Eats his brother's bride and is like, absolutely not. Older brothers marry first. My brother's not getting married until I get married. And his parents are like, okay, honey, no problem. Like, we'll get you a bride. And so they put out a call for, who wants to marry a prince, right? Big sweepstakes. Who wants to marry a prince? And all of these applicants show up and they choose one and they're like, okay, here's your prince. And they bring her into the dungeon or the center of the castle where the Lindworm lives, right? At the heart of the castle. And she's like, okay, I guess I'm marrying you. And he devours her, right? And it's like, I want another one. Send me a bride. Older brothers marry first. And so again, we have this sort of monstrosity, right, living at the center of the castle. And again, this is he is born because there is a betrayal of the gods or a betrayal of the magic. Right. And so we have this sort of monstrosity living at the heart of the castle, at the center of the self, that wants something, is craving something, is consuming brides one by one. Right. And this sort of desire and craving is preventing him from marrying, preventing like the union of the opposites or the hero's gamos or the sense of wholeness from taking place, right? But it's still consuming the idea of wholeness. Oh, if I get a bride, if I get this thing, if I get to marry, then I'll be whole. And it gets what it thinks it wants and consumes it and is still empty, right? And does not find that sense of wholeness. So one day, after way too many brides are devoured by this lindworm, right, a peasant girl is found to marry him. Right. And as she is like waiting to go to the castle, she's sitting under this tree in solitude, and an old witch shows up and it's like, oh, I hear you're gonna marry a lindworm. So why don't you sew 9 wedding shirts, right, before you get married to him? Tell him that the wedding's off for a little bit. You got to sew these 9 shirts, and then on your wedding night, show up with a scrub brush and a wash basin full of milk, right? And so when it is time for this peasant girl to marry the lindworm, right? They go through the ceremony and then goes into the dungeon, into the lindworm's cave, right? The heart of the castle. And the lindworm is like, now you're my bride. Take off your wedding shirt. And she's like, I will, but I'll take off my shirt, but I want you to take off a layer of your scales after that, right? And fair exchange. And he's like, how am I going to do that? And she's like, well, I have this scrub brush and this bowl of milk. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Take off your shirt. And she takes off a shirt, right? And there's another one underneath. Lindworm is shocked. And she's like, okay, now your turn. And so she takes the scrub brush and the milk and scrubs and scrubs and scrubs and scrubs and scrapes off all of a layer of scales, which is incredibly painful. And now he's like, okay, now you take off your shirt. And she takes off the next one, right? And she has another wedding shirt underneath, right? And then she scrubs off another layer of skin, and again and again and again and again and again until the lindworm has been scrubbed bare and he's actually a prince, right? Or a human who is fragile and has been wounded and rejected and has built up these layers of scales, right? And this inflated sense of grandiosity to keep himself safe, you know. And they marry and live happily ever after. And one of the reasons that I bring this up, right, is that I think about this lindworm as the sort of north node who is consuming, right? Oh, if I just get a bride, if I just have sex, if I just have this thing that provides emotional regulation, right, then I'll be okay. But like can't actually find that sense of regulation, can't actually find that connection, right? Is just consuming the sort of symbol of it, and is never happy and is actually like creating a lot of destruction, right? Until this person shows up with the willingness to, participate in this, and also the kind of cleverness and smarts to actually show compassion, right? And to help remove the thick layers of scales that this individual has built up to keep them safe in a world where they felt abandoned, right? And to actually get to a level where there can be co-regulation and connection, which is what that kind of North Node Venus is actually craving for, is like deep connection and not just the like surface level, physical touch or like consuming of a product or media or excitement that like we think will actually help the nervous system. Right. But what we need to do is like allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to be seen and to be held and to be felt, right? And to be loved and to actually receive that love instead of just trying to consume and consume and consume and being like, oh, the next thing will fix me. The next thing will fix me. Right. And, this actually allows the lindworm to marry instead of preventing that actual connection, that actual marriage, that actual like shift or motion taking place, right? The instead he was just consuming, thinking, oh, this will fix it, right? But like that wedding was never able to occur. That wholeness, that sense of connection was never able to occur. So next up, Thursday, April the 24th, just 7.5 short hours later, Venus in Pisces conjunct Saturn in Pisces at 27 degrees and 13 minutes. And keep that Lindworm story in mind. We're going to circle back around to it, right? This is the third and final conjunction of Venus and Saturn, right? So all these shifts are happening around this like Pisces Aries axis. The Venus retrograde contacting Neptune, contacting the North Node, contacting Saturn are all beginning to sort of unfold here, and these stories are coming into completion. So the first conjunction was on January the 18th. So think back to what was going on then. The second one was a couple weeks ago on April the 7th. This is the final conjunction between these two planets this year, and this may bring an increase of responsibility in relationship. Saturn is a responsible dude, right? Saturn is also lonely and solitary, so there may be feelings of loneliness or needs for solitude, right? There may be feelings of pressure. Saturn is really heavy, right? This may show us what's not working. This is a place where we are asked to commit or go home. Saturn really likes commitment, right? We may ask ourselves, is this what I really want to do? Is this really what I want to show up for? You know? Or this may be a place where we want to deepen our commitment and say yes to the reality that we are building in relationship, right? This may be a place where we want to strengthen the relational container, right? Because relationship is a structure. And one of the best things that I've ever heard in my life is relationship is a container for growth, right? And Saturn helps to hold a container. So Saturn helps to make a strong relational container so that we can grow as individuals and together, right? This also might be a place where we recognize that the work that we've been putting in is still doesn't hold water, right? Either way, this is a get real moment, right? So Saturn deals with limitations. So this may show us some of the limitations of what feels good, right? Or the ways that we've or the ways that we are able to get our needs met in relationship or in any area of our life. Right? This may show us some of the limitations to the ways that we have been seeking pleasure or the fulfillment of our desires. It also might show us the limitations of our relationships. Venus is coming off this conjunction with the North Node, which might have like initiated this hunger, right? A hunger that was sparked way back when by Venus's conjunction with Neptune, which might have had dreams about what could feel good or fantasies about what Venus desires, right? The North Node causes Venus to want more, right? Or to feel unfulfilled in some ways. Now, Venus is coming into this conjunction with Saturn, which introduces this reality principle, and it shows us the limitations of what is possible. Venus says, I desire this, and Saturn's like, that's not going to happen, right? And then it's up to us to either recognize that the limitations may be working for us and supporting our long-term goals, right? Or we may say, I'm done and I want to go pursue that desire or dream, right? And this is not just in like interpersonal relationship or like one-on-one relationship, or intimate relationship. This may be in jobs or living situations or other areas of our life, right? Because Venus also deals with our values. And when we hit this sort of limitation of Saturn, it's like, okay, am I living in accordance with my values? Right? Or am I compromising my values because I think this is all that's available? Right? Um, so we get to ask ourselves if the limit is preventing growth or is helping us to cultivate joy and pleasure, right? Saturn also helps us to maintain dedication, right? So coming back to the story of the lindworm, right? Instead of being swept away by the proposal that we can marry a prince and becoming incinerated, right? Rushing in too fast, Saturn takes things slow, right? This is helping us to, move slowly and to like construct something that feels sustainable, right? Instead of like running in and getting burned up or devoured, right? Um, there's I've pulled this story from Martin Shaw's Courting the Wild Twin. I'm sorry, I can't read my notes because I was taking them in such a frenzy today. But Martin Shaw talks about the sort of shirts that the wedding shirts that the peasant lady is sewing, right? And he says this shirt making is about not getting incinerated, not fetishizing ashes as the only way to depth, because it's not. We don't need to set fire to our lives or marry a psychopath to deepen. I mean, it happens, but it's not recommended, right? And so we have this kind of like process of like making these shirts, which in one way is armor, right? But is another way is an invitation to get closer, but it's a slow kind of unfolding, right? Where the North Node is like, oh my God, I want this, I want this, I want to rush in, right? we're saying like we don't need to set fire to our lives, right? This doesn't need to like we don't need to incinerate ourselves to get to the next level. We can go through this process slowly, and this is the wisdom that Saturn brings. Instead of pulling us into the belly of the beast, right? Saturn allows us to kind of take things slowly and take a step and be like, how does this feel, right? Is this all right? How do I feel right now? Right? Saturn is about boundaries, right? And so, what are the boundaries or limitations that we have set up to help support us, right? And this is sort of what the wedding shirts are, right? How do we protect our joy? Is another question that we can ask here. What is the container that helps us to experience joy and pleasure, right? To hold those feelings, right? And this is what Saturn can provide. It helps us to remediate the hunger of Rahu, the north node, by limiting its intake, right? Providing structures for us to thrive instead of being trapped in the cycle of craving and always wanting more. According to Buddhist teacher and somatic experiencing practitioner Kathy Cherry, craving is a plea for regulation, right? So the thing that we are hungering for is actually our system calling out for care and regulation. And Saturn, in the role of the responsible and wise elder, can help us to recognize what's going on by providing regulation in the moment instead of being swept away by the force of this dragon that is constantly looking for the next experience, the next snack, the next thing that we think will fulfill us, right? But actually activates more longing and craving. Saturn helps us to meet our need in the moment when we can operate within our limits. And for Venus, this may look a lot like co-regulation, right? And Saturn can help us develop the structures where co-regulation can be possible. So instead of being dysregulated in our system, being like, oh, I need that other thing, I need that other thing, we can learn to regulate ourselves, right, and regulate our nervous systems, or ask for what we need from other people and come into a space of co-regulation with each other. Um, Hold on one second. I see some stuff in the chat. Let me check this out. Um, yeah, Astrology by Moonlight saying, I'm asking myself if these limitations are something I've created for myself. And if so, how can I break out of those self-imposed limits? Right. And I think this is the real question. Are these limitations helping me, or are they keeping me safe? Or are they preventing me from growing? And I think the wisdom that I'm trying to bring in is like it can be both, right? And also like we can take it slow. We don't need to just throw off the limitations and run naked in the street, even though that might be fun, right? And maybe that's the appropriate response sometimes. And other times it might be like, okay, how do I take it slowly? How do I open up these limitations without becoming flooded or overwhelmed, right? um, yeah, and Gina Marie is saying inch by inch makes a mile, and that's the triple truth. And we climb a mountain one step at a time. All right. Okay. So coming towards the end, the big news for the week. We have on Saturday, April the 26th, we have Mars in Leo opposing Pluto in Aquarius. This is occurring at 3 degrees and 48 arc minutes of the fixed signs of Leo and Aquarius. So first up, Leo is the individual and Aquarius is the collective, right? So, what we are setting up is this struggle, right? This tension, this opposition between what I need to do for myself versus what is being asked of me by the collective, right? And I think these archetypes are like, the sort of particle in the wave, right? We are each these unique particles who are living our lives, shining our light, being our unique and wild selves, right? And we are also in the collective wave of Aquarius, right? We are part of something bigger than ourselves. And this is how do we show up as an individual, right, within the context of the collective? And I think this is the question that is going to be asked again and again and again during Pluto's 20 years in Aquarius, right? And so with Mars, the planet of action, right? Planet of fire, planet that cuts and penetrates and struggles and fights, right? opposing Pluto, a planet of power, right? We have power struggles. And I sort of touched on this last week, right? We have these themes of power struggles that are developing, and this is the third opposition between these planets. The first one was on November the 3rd. The second one was on January the 3rd. And so this is the sort of completion of this relationship, right? And so on the theme of power struggles, and I brought this up last week, in the collective, we have power struggles developing with Donald Trump, right, taking on Harvard, who is like absolutely not, right, taking on the Supreme Court, trying to deport legal citizens to a gulag in El Salvador, right, and the struggle over getting Abrego Garcia back, which is like incredibly tragic. And I don't really want to like go down that cul-de-sac right now because like I feel it very frightening and activating and depressing, but just to say like, our government is trying to steal people off the streets and send them to a concentration camp in El Salvador, right? Which is the president of El Salvador was like, no one gets out of this, right? Which is basically an extermination camp, And so this is happening, and Trump is trying to put this forward and is also like meeting resistance from people and also hopefully institutions, one of which may be the Supreme Court, right? And the court systems are trying to block this. We'll see how this unfolds, but right, what is being set up here is power struggles, right? Again, with Harvard, with the Supreme Court, and also with China and a trade war that is kind of developing or brewing. And so, as Mars and Pluto, right, come into opposition, this is sort of coming to the surface and boiling over, right? And so, how is this going to resolve, right? And so during the kind of beginning of the Trump administration, people kind of cowered to them and they cowered to him and took the approach that if they didn't make noise, like things would be all right, And I think while that is a survival strategy of like fawning or fleeing, right? I think what is proved over time and time and time again is that when we just sort of lay down to authoritarians, they will do whatever they want and roll over them or roll over everything and institute more and more harmful policies, right? And so, what we saw is like people sort of cowering to Trump, law firms and other institutions who sort of caved to the Trump administration. And one example is Columbia, who totally buckled to the point of turning over a list of their foreign students' names and addresses so that the administration could harass and threaten and deport them, right, for exercising their First Amendment rights to free speech, right? And that didn't stop the Trump administration, right? They like even after Columbia was like, sure, we'll do whatever you want. I'm sorry, sir. The Trump administration didn't give them any money, and they continued to like tighten the screws, right? And then they sent this letter to Harvard, and they were like, you need to do all these things, which didn't make any sense. And Harvard was like, absolutely not. Right. And they're standing over up to the administration who threatened to cancel like $2 billion, which is nothing to Harvard. They have like a $54 billion endowment, right? And so, you know, Harvard said, bring it, right? Which is setting up this conflict and power struggle. It's also, this is the important thing here, right? It's not about how much money Harvard has or like what their reputation is. It's setting a precedent, right, for other institutions that it's possible to stand up to this administration. It's possible to stand up to power, right, and to speak out against this tyrannical administration, right? And so I think one of the things that Mars asks for is courage, right? And having the courage to fight and having the courage to fight these sort of looming monsters that are appearing on the horizon. And this can also be a time of a breakthrough, right? As pressures increase, right, we are called to take action and initiate change. This can be a release point where the energy of the Mars and Pluto cycle culminates in some way. can also show up as explosions or eruptions, as we said last week, where these the little things build up and they build up until these powerful psychological forces bubbling under the surface force their way up and erupt, right? And so Mars tends to pick fights. Mars is a fighter, right? That's how they know how to relate, right? And they can pick fights that pull us deeper into an initiation, right? Or we can think of it as a tempering and not an initiation, right? We'll see how it goes. Mars may get us mixed up in something that ends up being very transformative, right? And this is it pulls us into the underworld, right? It picks a fight that like pulls us into an underworld, right? And starts a conflict with, or a burst of energy or a flash of rage, and it ends up dragging us into, this underworld where we're forced to contend with something much more than what we had bargained for, right? Which may help in the process of soul making, but it also might feel utterly overwhelming, and it requires some courage to navigate. Right. And so I think this is one of the things that we're going to see, that we have been seeing with this Mars Pluto cycle, right? This sort of fight that like pulls us deeper and deeper and deeper. And the only way out is through when you go to the underworld, right? When you're going through hell, keep on going, as they say. So Pluto is about power, right? And Mars is action. So this maybe actions that initiate us into power, or it might ask us to recognize the place where we have been giving up power, where we need to take action to claim our power. This opposition asks us to recognize where we hold power, right? And how we can access it and how we can utilize it, and the actions that we can take to either bring to access that power or to use it in our lives, right? Or it can show up as fear of the power that is held by others, right? So that we cave or hand over our power, right? Mars is a warrior, and they're about courage and bravery. You can see this as Mars facing down the shadow of some giant monster. Or do we cave and run away and hide? Or do we show up and take action to defeat this dragon? And I think about the story of Hercules battling the Hydra, right? This great monster with multiple heads, and each time Hercules cuts off one of the heads, two more grow back in its place. Right, this is an image of the power of the shadow, which grows more to monstrous proportions when it's repressed. Right, it begins to entangle all these parts of our lives and parts of culture, right, that isn't looked at and dealt with appropriately. So Hercules, in his battle with the Hydra, realizes that brute force alone is not going to defeat this creature that can multiply its lethal force, right? So what does he do? He has a nephew, Iolaus, who helps him out and comes up with his new plan, right? So he says, Hercules, Herc, if you cut off this dude's head, I'm gonna burn it with this torch and cauterize its neck stump, right? And this prevents the heads from growing back. And so through teamwork and intelligence and innovation, which intelligence and innovation are not martial qualities, right? These are more mercurial, but we're going to work with what we got, right? So through teamwork, intelligence, innovation, they're able to defeat the Hydra's regenerative power. Also, Mercury is sort of in a trine to Mars during this time, so maybe we get some insight and innovation. Right, so Pluto opposing Mars sets up this conflict where we might feel activated or tense or dysregulated, right? We sends us into a fight or flight, right? And fight or flight is not conducive to thinking or co-regulation or teamwork, right? However, the story tells us that working together and using innovative thinking helps us to defeat the monsters that are rising up in the out of their foul, poisonous stench. Right, Hercules discovers that one of the Hydra's heads was immortal and could not be killed, and so he cuts off this head with a golden sword and buries the immortal head, in a hole in the ground under a massive rock. Right, and this proves that even the mightiest challenges have weaknesses that can be exploited. Right? And the story reminds us that the forces of chaos can take many forms, and sometimes it becomes overwhelming trying to wrestle with everything. Sometimes brute force isn't enough, and we need to have courage and also the ability to have enough awareness to ask for help, right? And to try out new solutions to the issue of evil and the forces of chaos. So, with Mars opposing Pluto, we are facing down this Hydra. We need to have the courage to show up for the fight, but we also need to be present enough to ask for help and to work with others and to receive help, and clever enough to find new and innovative solutions to the problem. Right? So we can deal with the Hydra's one immortal head and place it out of reach, right? Without getting burned by this creature's poisonous blood or choked by its poisonous breath. I think of the poisonous breath as the media ecosystem, right? Which is constantly bombarding us with kind of dysregulating information, right? And I think that it's important to stay connected, to stay in tune, to know what's going on. And at the same time, we got to know what our limits are, because if we're just like in this sort of poison air of all of this like media fear, right, it becomes very difficult to stay regulated, to remember to ask for help, to remember which direction we're going in, right? And so this is a tall order, but it's a lot easier if we can work together, right? And by one person standing up, right, and taking a stand to battle the Hydra, it empowers others to show up for that fight. And everyone may not be Hercules, which is, I think, probably a great thing, right? Because he was kind of a problematic character, but each person brings their own unique skills and abilities to this time, right? And this is how the Hydra is eventually defeated. And the next transit would be Sunday, April the 27th. We have a new moon in Taurus at 7 degrees and 46 minutes. And this is going to be T square to the Mars Pluto opposition, which is at like 3 degrees and change. And so, I think that this energy is going to be building and building and building during the week. And the new moon may be a point of release, right? Not saying that this is over and come Monday morning, everything's going to be great. I mean, it will be because, I'll be here. But, I think that some of the pressure might kind of be taken off. And there's also an opportunity to plant a new seed in the sign of Taurus, which really prizes feeling good and regulation and safety. And this is not, sticking our heads in the sand, but it is noticing what are the resources, what are the things that I got going for me, what is working for me to help support me so that I can show up in a good way to deal with this Hydra however I can. Right. And Sam Reynolds, great astrologer Sam Reynolds, has this theory that Taurus is the most revolutionary of the signs. And I kind of want to believe that, and I want to, and one of the things that I've been holding, right, as Uranus has been moving through Taurus for these past couple of years, is that what we need or what's happening, right, but maybe what we can be aware of is a Venusian revolution, a revolution that prizes beauty and love and connection and joy and pleasure, right? And, this is not to, again, not to like stick our heads in the sand or be like, oh, I don't want to like deal with the things that are hard. I just want to feel good, right? But I think that, any revolution where I can't dance isn't my revolution. You know what I'm saying? My revolution is dance, dance revolution. Right. So, to think about the ways that we can increase joy, that we can increase pleasure, that we can increase safety, that we can increase connection. Right. And I think the transformation of a world that feels scary and gross and like pretty aesthetically like nah, right? To create beauty in our lives, in ourselves, in our environments, in our communities, with each other, in the world. I think this is the stone tossed in the pond, and those ripples of beauty and joy and pleasure and dancing and celebration emanate outward, right? And they kind of activate people who are like, oh shit, like why am I suffering in this like gray hellhole, right? Why am I living on the severed floor when I could be, experiencing joy and pleasure and connection, right? And so, with that, my friends, I will bid you a fond farewell. Heads up, I'm going to be, okay, couple announcements. I'm going to be speaking at LA Astrofest next Saturday, April the 26th. I hope to see you there. If you happen to be in LA on the West Coast, anywhere near anything, come to LA, come check it out. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are going to be a bunch of great astrologers there, including Sam Reynolds, who I just referenced. And if you're curious about why Taurus is the most revolutionary of the signs, you can ask him when you come see us at LA Astrofest. Because I'm going to be in LA, and then shortly after that, I'll be driving to Tucson to give a talk with Sam Reynolds and Lindsay Turner, the Bad Pastor, at Cosme in Tucson. Which, if you're in Tucson next week, come check us out there. Because I will be driving on Monday, I don't think I'm going to be doing this report. Maybe I will find a way to record it, put it on the YouTube. But also, you know what? I could use a break. Your wizard been working hard, and I could use a break. So maybe I'll take next Monday off. You'll be fine. Space will still be happening. We'll still be living. The world will still be turning. I guarantee you. And then I'll be back the following Monday, having maybe a little bit more space in my life. So anyway, that's a couple updates. Also, speaking of Venusian Revolution, I got a radio show called the Melee Report. It is an astrology themed radio show with all the astro weather you never thought you needed, set to all the music you never thought you would hear. And I just put out an episode yesterday, which I'll make available to the listening public as soon as I'm done with this. And that episode was completing the trilogy of the Descent of Inanna mythology from Sumeria. This is syncretized with the Venus retrograde cycle, and now that Venus has station direct. This was the culmination of our story when Inanna returns to the land of the living and confronts her deadbeat boyfriend Demuzi, a la the Barbie movie. So, if you are interested in learning more about Sumerian myth or listening to some great music, because I tell you what, there is some great music in this one. I'm pretty proud of this show myself. Check out the Melee Report. Also, usually it's very, very much like this, except for less talk, more rock, where I go through the transits of the week, but I put it to music. If you're curious, just check it out. It's on SoundCloud. I'll put a link in the show notes on the YouTube and in my stories on the Instagram. Um, Oh, and Gina Maria is saying that, yeah, she just took a fantastic 8-week class with me and my partner, Marlena Seven Bremner, on myth, magic, and astrology. And yeah, hopefully we'll teach that again. But if you're interested in checking that out, we're gonna make that class available for download online. You can go to Seven's website, marlena7bremner.com, and that should be up as soon as I can get around to putting it on the intertubes on the tubes of the internet. But yeah, a week or two that should be up if you want to learn more about the planets or working with them magically or the mythologies associated with them. And that, my friends, is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you so much for tuning in. I wish you all a great week in space. This is an intense one, so remember, find something beautiful, connect in with each other, deep breaths, do what you can to stay regulated. We're going to make it through this week, and we're going to keep showing up, and we're going to keep suiting up, and we're going to keep doing our thing. And, we're all in this together, battling the Hydra. So, I got your back. And yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, try and stay connected. And may the force be with you. All right. Until next time, my friends, be well. And yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in and have a great week in space. Bye now.